Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to the final session before lunch. It's a great session. I think they've all been great, so I might be slightly biased, but another great session to come. Beyond Vanity, the growth of performance-driven influencer marketing. And I'd like you all to say a warm welcome and maybe give a round of applause as we welcome Yanan Wang, Influencer Marketing Lead at BCW. Where are you, Yanan? Come on board. Say hello to Beth Oddy, UK Client Director at Tribe. Please say hello to Chris Davis, Commercial Director at Gleam, and Myra Genovese, Founder and President of MGM Power. I'm going to hand over the power of the mic to you, Chris, and enjoy your session.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, I think
I'm sorry, it's too noisy.
I'm going to regret the microphone.
Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm absolutely honored to be here with three special guests here to talk about, sorry, let me move to this side a little bit, about performance-driven influencer marketing. As we all know, influencer marketing started off with brands testing, dipping their toes in water, starting to test it out campaign by campaign basis, to shift it to long-term influencer marketing investment, and started to...
Microphone.
You got a problem with
Yeah.
Hello? Oh, sorry. Just give it a minute.
It's completely... Yeah. You can continue,
Sorry, guys.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Why not? Because it's just, it's just yes, but you have to...
Yes, sorry again. So we know that brands start testing their, dipping their toes in the water, testing influencer marketing from campaign by campaign basis to now shifting their focus to long-term investment. But still, for a long time, the biggest challenge in influencer marketing is how do we prove that it's working? How do we drive success and prove business growth, ROIs? We have many brands questioning around how do they make sure that every penny they spend on influencer marketing is making worth, which means that the mindset now is leaning towards influencer, looking at the performance side of things. So I wanted to discuss with our three lovely panelists today to talk about, what does this mean for future of influencer marketing? So Mayura, you got your microphone sorted now.
About that, I knew that microphone for me wouldn't work.
So tell me, what do you think are the benefits of now moving towards performance-driven influencer marketing?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure to be sharing this conversation with you all. It's amazing to see when I started our business Imaging Power 5 years ago, the way we used to analyze influencer results were completely different from the way we do today. So it's incredible to see how the industry has evolved and shifted from vanity metrics to now be much more assertive when brands are spending budget on influencer campaign. The future for influencer marketing, when you talk about results, is very data-driven, right? So technology will continue to play a huge role into how we measure results, how we invest on influencer. And I think looking at the future, when you're thinking of collaborating with influencer based on performance, that will help a lot brands to not just understanding what they are getting in terms of ROI from their investment, but also be more assertive when it comes to creating content and understanding data, understand behavior of consumers. And for influencers, I think it's going to be a huge impact for them to start understand how they can actually looking into analyze their metric for their own content, because working with influencers will feel like sometimes no, this is their role, right? So they're creatives. So they're just focused on creating the content and creating content that are authentic, that's going to engage with their audience, but they don't have much understanding on data, right? So how their content is performing, what's the results that they're bringing to the brand. And I think that change will not just help brands to be, more, looking into kind of, what is the data, what's the results, what is not just impressions and likes, but looking into more engagement and looking more into engagement rate. And for the influencers, it's just, it will be an amazing opportunity for them to understand metric and getting better in what they do.
Thank you, thank you. It's a very interesting point that you were saying about data and metrics. And we know that brands now caring more about not only just vanity metrics, but also ultimately, the basket sales. But also, I think influencer marketing should never sit in silo. It's always about bringing all the channels, looking at potential for integration. So Beth, what's your view on in terms of like how brands now looking at more performance-driven influence marketing and looking at the integration of wider media, and does that have impact on content performance, influencer performance, and what's your view on that?
Yeah, absolutely agree that. Is that right? Yeah, that influencer marketing shouldn't sit in silo with paid. So I think we all know that traditionally influencer marketing isn't performance marketing, but we actually now have the capabilities to do these really, full funnel social approaches and actually use influencer marketing as our starting point to really inform our paid. So, measuring our organic post metrics, engagement, sentiment, and really seeing what content resonates well in a social environment, and then using that to inform what we boost to our targeted audiences as a branded content ad, or what content we take to use in our own channels. So, by partnering with creators, you can really test and learn and kind of, iterate on the fly based on those learnings, and even brief creators with a paid approach in mind. And I think we're all in agreement that obviously UGC is the best performing in paid. It's what we're all used to seeing. And actually, we've done a few tests, and we found that when brands are pushing out ads as normal from their brand account, alongside boosting those creator posts, those top performing posts, to their target audience, where that content is linked and similar, that's really where you are driving the best results.
Absolutely. I think another thing we also see is a lot of brands start using these organic performance on influencers content and identify which ones are the good ones to use for paid, which then they can optimize results further. I suppose it's all coming back to working with other channels to make the most of influencer marketing and driving higher ROI. So Chris, what about you? What do you think of the performance side of influencer marketing? What do you think this has got impact on future of influencer marketing in general?
Personally, I think this is a good thing, and I think that as we've all said, that the way that influencer marketing started out was very much vanity metrics. Likes. Like if you get 20,000 likes, you're going to sell 20,000 products. Not necessarily, but I think the way that the industry is maturing and other channels are realizing the benefit of working with talent and then working with creators in new and different ways, and actually seeing the value that they provide. We're now able to see influencers moving into an area where they can be measured against other channels, because it's always been comparing apples against oranges. But now that the more established that the work that everybody in this industry is doing, it's becoming more established. And also you've got, really technical sort of opportunities around like econometric modeling and things like that are are able to kind of unpick where attribution comes from and contributes different sort of values to different channels and things like that. So I think personally it's a really good thing for the industry that we are maturing and we're getting to the point where we can be compared against more traditional channels, but not just in terms of a combative way, but more of like the way that we can all work together and we can all see that actually influencer marketing is a hugely powerful channel, and when it's partnered in the right way with like out of home or with TV or anything like that, it only kind of lifts everything else around it, rather than it being, as we've all said, being sat in silo, which has always been a bit of a problem.
Absolutely, I agree. Thank you for that. So looking at performance metrics, what do you think this has got an impact on working with creators? When you go to them and when you look at their post thinking, oh, your engagement rate is 2%, whereas the other creator engagement rate is 5%. So when it comes to performance influencer marketing now, because we care about what kind of conversions these influencers start driving, so what do you think that the impact has on building the relationship with the influencers? Now we are kind of like judge on their performance, Mayura.
Yes, and I think like it's even the influencers, again, like being working with creators for so many years, we feel that it's not just the industry and the brands are evolving in the way they analyze performance, but also influencers, they are more and more engaging in to get better and to understand their results. So when we work with the talents, we are very transparent and say what are the results they're bringing to the clients or to the campaigns they're doing. And you can see that they're more interested in, to understand, okay, what is my engagement rate for this campaign? What was the clicks that I have converted for this brand? And I think when it comes to comparing influencers, it's a tough one, because each influencer, especially when it comes to tier strategy, right? So we have the nano influencers, the micro influencers, the macros, and the megas. And then sometimes a mega influencer with over 1 million followers, she will have 1% engagement rate, whereas a micro influencer can have the same engagement rate. And you go like, oh, but the mega influencer has over 1 million followers and she has the same engagement of the micro. But you cannot compare like per like, because each of influencers, depending on the tier, they deliver a different metric, right? So micro and nano influencers, from our experience recently, we see much more conversion rather than brand awareness. And when it comes to macro, you can see that the brand awareness coming from them is much higher. And I think it's all about educating the influencers, because when we think about, as Beth mentioned about page content, brands are more and more boosting content from the creators, right? So it's their interest to understand if their content is relevant for that brand to boost, because they know they're gonna earn more, right? Because I have to pay for the image rights to get that content boost. And then it comes as well with the affiliated market. So if they wanted to, get more revenue or monetize more for the brand's partnership, they have to understand metric in order for us to create a campaign of affiliate marketing where if they convert, if they got the engagement, they'll get more paid. So I think it's all about educating influencers and get them to be, willing to learn more about metrics, because the creator economy is out there, right? So creators now, they know more than ever that they can monetize more than they used to. And I think it's a great to see how this is evolving for them as well.
Great, thank you. And speaking of monetizing using influencers model, and let's think about the purpose of brands wanting to collaborate with influencers. If it's from like a brand awareness, a higher funnel perspective from, for example, from PR, brand agencies, they want to collaborate with the bigger influencers. Whereas when it comes to conversions, we've seen industries like e-commerce are beneficial more from using influencers. And we've seen these social media channels have new features now, allow people to shop on Instagram, on TikTok. There's now Shopify features. So Beth, from your point of view, looking at different channels, which ones do you think are the best ones at driving those performance-driven influencer marketing and working with creators moving forward to further move users further down to the funnel and then to drive potentially sales?
Yeah, so as you just mentioned there, so Facebook, encompassing Instagram there, and TikTok are really battling for that performance, to really own that performance and buyer journey. And like you said, yeah, Instagram's almost entirely shoppable, TikTok partnered with Shopify, and there's been huge progression in this space over the last few months. I think particularly shopping from creators, like that is massive. It's going to be a game changer. It's really what we as marketers have been looking for, is being able to, track direct results from our influencer posts. And it really means that it's no longer about, that engagement fraud that we would typically talk about, because you can't fake those sales. And we'll start to see a move from pay per post to pay on performance. And so, like I was saying before, it's really important to partner with these creators to get those partnerships in place, that the people are going to be, the people that are going to be driving your performance. And I think the people that win will be the people that, the brands and the marketers that really understand that and really get the creator economy and connect, content, communication, commerce, and are really set up for that, because creators are, they're the retail partner of tomorrow. And so if you win them, you're going to win their audiences and ultimately win the shoppers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me to think of hashtag TikTok made me buy. You guys seen that? So I want to ask a question to the audience, actually. Who bought anything from Instagram or TikTok? Yeah? Wow. It's like, what, 70% of people? So I suppose this is the future of e-commerce, where you can go on social media and look at what your friends are talking about, look at what the creators are talking about a specific product, and then literally just click that buy, and then your products arrive next day. So it's brilliant. So Chris, what do you think of the this interesting shift mindset, looking from both, because we were talking about from creator perspective and platform, but what about in general, like the relationship between the brand and influencers? How do you think, from looking at a agency perspective, you get a brief from the client and thinking, okay, so this is now our objectives is to drive further conversions, but does that change to build that relationship with the creators from your view?
So yeah, we're quite lucky at Gleam that we have the two sides of our business. We have the talent management side where we actually manage the talent, and then we have the Gleam solution side, which is our kind of influencer marketing agency. So we get to see from both sides. I think I'll probably talk more from the talent side here, but I think talent and creators want to know as much as they can. They want the partnership to work as much as the brands do. So I think the more data that we're now starting to get access to, and historically, I think brands have been quite hesitant to share that kind of data with talent, but actually it is a partnership and talent want to learn what's best. So if they can inform, say a talent creates 10 pieces of content for a brand, and they say, oh, actually, of those 10 pieces of content you created, these 3 actually drove more conversions for us. The talent can then take a step back and look at that content and say, actually, what did I do with these 3 that I didn't do so much with the other 7? And then it allows them to inform what they're going to do. So then the next time they work with that brand, the brand can go, okay, our focus now is more on conversions. That talent can then go, okay, well, I know what worked last time, and I can maybe try and take some of those learnings and move that into the next campaign. And it just builds and builds and builds. And it's something that, we at Gleam, but just also the whole industry have always been campaigning for, that relationships between talent and brand should always be long-term. There's always a space for pay-to-play, and there's always a space for that kind of short-term sort of, we've got a campaign, let's grab someone to work with. That will always work. But the more established long-term relationships are going to become so much more powerful, especially with all the changes with like HFSS now and things like that. And there's going to be a lot of brands who aren't going to be able to advertise their foods, but they're going to be able to talk about their brand messaging. And it's those long-term established relationships with creators that will allow them to tell that brand messaging in the right way, in the best way. And ultimately, performance is whatever the brand's KPIs are. I know we talk about performance as ultimately driving sales, but at the same time, if you're I don't want to mention the brand, but a food brand that's in the HFSS kind of world, knowing now that they're going to have to just be doing that kind of global brand messaging, that's performance for them as well. And being able to build those long-term relationships with creators that can tell that story on your behalf is only going to become more and more valuable, I think.
Yeah, absolutely agree, and especially your point on setting up KPIs, because it is about conversions driving sales, but you really can't expect a creator can sell a car, in a second, just because of she or he did Instagram post, or if you're a property brand, what is the conversion to you is really driving the audience to the landing page and get them to fill out information, capture that lead, instead of you expect them to purchase something next day. So I think the KPI is absolutely important. So lastly, let's look at automation. As we all know, influence marketing is one of the essential marketing tactics now, but the actual campaign management and delivery involves intensive research and lots of time around from identifying the right influencers to work with, to brief them, to manage the content delivery. So the whole process can be really, really long and time-consuming. So what about these technology platforms lately claim they have these like AI technology, allow us to analyze their conversations, look at what are the best ones we should really pick. Can they drive efficiency around managing influencer campaigns, or do you think there's still a lot of like a human element in there that we need to touch on?
Well, I love the point that you said, like, shall we keep as well the human connection, not just the technology? So and you're totally right? So to implement an influencer marketing campaign, it takes a lot of work because you have to do the procurement of the influence. Actually, it always starts with the strategy, right? So it starts with the strategy that you're creating for the brand, understanding the KPIs you wanted to achieve for that campaign, understand what's the budget that the client wants to spend with that campaign, make sure that you're selecting the right influencers with the right voice to pass that message, and making sure that the influencer selection are the ones that are going to deliver against the target that has been defined. And that whole process takes a lot of time. So now think to the platforms. we are able to create more process that are more automated through platforms where you can manage campaign from to the start to the end and understanding results live. That's something that I love about technology and about platform nowadays, because before we will have to ask for the influencers for their data. Okay, can you send me a print screen of your stories, a print screen of your photo for us to understand what is the results that your content is bringing. So now the platforms, they are giving us the access of their results of their content on real time. And what this is good? It's good because we can measure results as the campaign is launched. And then we can adapt and change as we go along with the campaign, where before we would have to wait until the end of the campaign to understand the results. So now with the technology and data, we can react it quickly to performance and understand if the campaign, the type of content, the platform is resonating to the objective, and then adapt. However, it's very important that the human connection is still there, especially, this is something that I truly believe, that influencer marketing is not just transactional. So we have to have the technology and the data, because it's very important. It's changing the industry and it's making us much more efficient when it comes to analyze results. But I think the human connection with the influencer, and going back to the point of educating them how their content is performance, and using AI, to help us with, machine learning, to get all the learnings and pass that to the influencer and to the brand. It is very important to still have, that human contact with them above the technology.
Absolutely. And Beth, you were talking a lot about performance. Content performance earlier, and I'm thinking, do you think automation can help with optimized content when you look at which one works better than the other, and then inform that paid strategy we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely agree with Maria there. There's a lot of tech out there that claims to be the best, but really it is about formalizing those direct relationships with creators, because as I mentioned before, they are the retail partner of tomorrow. So you really need to be forming those actual real relationships with genuine brand fans and people who have got those engaged creators. And I think, we all know the spend in this space is ever increasing. And like I said, all the social platforms are fighting to own that buyer journey. So you need to foster those relationships so that you can make those partnerships, like Chris was saying, kind of long term, but also so that you can be reactive, agile, pivot campaign strategy as well, which I think is really important given the last 18 months we've just had, where we've had to change strategy so many times. And yes, you need automation there to help you connect to those creators and, allow you to see the data, see the metrics, have payment in place, have licensing T's and C's in place, and just really save you time and money. But what that does is, it secures your partnerships with those creators and allows you to use them not just for your marketing, but also for your creatives, as your creative house, but also to drive that performance we all want, so predominantly sales.
Absolutely. And Chris, do you have anything to add?
Well, automation is obviously going to be integral to how we move forward, and it has been, and it has been to our business as well. But I think there's always going to be a human element, and there's always going to be a requirement for a human element. And if there's not, we're all going to be out of a job in this room. But creative is always going to be a human part of what we do, and that's the biggest part of what we do. As much as we talk about performance and we talk about the ultimate KPIs, the reason that this area grew to what it did is because of the creative and because of the creators that create that content that people want to consume. And that's one thing that we really need to focus on. But then also from an automation point of view, I know from our perspective, we use it for kind of three main reasons, which is one, talent discovery, which is huge. There's millions and millions of creators out there, and no single person can claim to know everybody for every brand. So using that to then go and use various different data points to go and find the right talent to shortlist is great. But if you were to just leave that to a platform, just to audience match, you'd miss so much more to what makes influencer marketing different to every other channel, in that the fact that you have the human behind the content, they have their own interests, their way of, their own voice, their own way of doing things. So that kind of initial point of finding talent is really useful. The campaign management side, as well, as we've all discussed, is massive. There's campaigns where you're working with 50 talent, and to do that completely manually can take too long. And then reporting, to Myra's point, is hugely important, and the more access we have to those live results is only going to benefit everybody, and it allows us to make quicker decisions as the campaign's going, rather than having to wait till everything's finished and then kind of looking back on it sort of historically and saying, oh, we missed a trick there or something like that. So I think those kind of three areas are really where we're going to see automation continue to thrive.
Absolutely, and I love the human element we were all talking about here. I don't think the industry is ready for us to have a robot talking to the influencers just yet. So thank you. I think we got a few more minutes to for questions. We have questions on the stage.
Yeah, well, fascinating conversation. Thank you very much, everyone. But yes, we do have a few questions that have come in. In no particular order. We've only got 3 minutes left as well, so we're going to rattle through them. Here's a question that I wanted to ask as well. Will influencers ever be really willing to work purely on a performance basis and not receive an upfront fee? We talked about, I think earlier in the discussion, we talked about, I think we're used to working with influencers who create the content, and they're paid on the creation of the content. Now, that one of you guys mentioned a shift towards payment, in part at least, on the uptick and how well that piece of content travels. Will we see it exclusively on performance?
I can go. I think at the minute it's hard to say because we're all still, always. Hello? Oh, is that working? Yeah, it's such an ever-changing environment. No, it's not. Oh, hello. But I think, like we've all sort of mentioned, it's about fostering those real relationships with people who you have tested and know work, and have those audience that are going to, engage with your brand and get you the results that you want. So if you're partnering with the right creators, they will be driving those sales for you, and so they will be getting paid. And so I think if you've got the right relationships in place, then yes, I could see that happening. But it's just about, getting those right relationships in place.
And I think another important point here, that they will accept to move forward without not having a fee if you co-create something with the influencer, right? So I think co-creation is also something that we're going to see more and more, like brands co-creating a product or co-creating a special edition of a moisturizer signed by an influencer, because then they will see a value of not getting the fee up front, but seeing the value of co-creating something with their name, where they can get, shares of the sales if, the product goes, well when they start selling. I think it's how you show the value to the influencer in order for them to accept not having a fee up front will be a key element.
And just quickly, I also think is now going back to like affiliate marketing. As you can see, some creators already start joining affiliate, and then look at affiliate model is like you don't get upfront fee, and it's very, very incentive based. So I think maybe a small percentage of these creators will consider that kind of model. But again, depends on what objectives that client's trying to achieve there.
I'd agree with that. I think of course it's loud now, isn't it? There's so many millions of creators out there. I don't think you can blanket and say, yes, everyone's going to move to a performance model, because everybody's different and everybody has... Because don't forget that these people are humans as well, and they've got their own lives to worry about. And if they need to pay their mortgage, they need to work for a fee. And I think it just very much will depend on individual conversations between brands, and to Mara's point, the relationships that brands have with them and things like that. I definitely think there will be people out there who will be happy to do it for a paid performance, but also don't forget that a lot of talent out there aren't marketeers. They're not marketers. They don't, for them to kind of understand their performance, they would need the help of the brand. And so there's going to be a big knowledge share that's going to be required there for the talent to understand what's required of them in order for them to earn money. So I think it's going to be come down to individual conversations and definitely down to the relationships they have.
We've run out of time. There are a couple more questions that we could have gone into, but given where we are with the microphones and passing the baton up and down, I think we'll probably leave it there. I think it's a fascinating conversation. And something that Mara said about the co-creation. It used to be co-creation of content. Now we're sort of backward engineering that to co-creation of product. And we've talked about it earlier in earlier sessions about influencers being sort of focus groups, but on steroids as well. They know their community, what they like and what they don't like. So I think that is a wonderful place to end. Thank you very much to the panel for expertly chaired by Yenan. We're going to break for lunch now, an hour and a half. See everyone back at 2 o'clock. But if we could just say thank you again to the panel.